Hello everybody, this is OrangeJuice TV. I am the developer for Power Creations and I'm currently talking to you from the Bannerfall Patreon release map. In case you aren't aware, Bannerfall is a stream series that Power Creations did where everybody was different medieval mages, rogues and knights. It was a lot of fun and we recently released the plugin that made it possible over on our Patreon. Something that people have been requesting is that they've seen that we had custom swords, staffs and other such things inside of the server and they want to know how they can do that. While I'm no artist myself, I am a developer and I can teach you how to get something that somebody else made on Blockbench into the game, as well as how to set it up so that your players can do it without you needing to constantly step in for them as the admin. That's what this tutorial is for. It's not to teach you how to use Blockbench. It's not to teach you the ins and outs of how to create textures and other such things. This is more the developer side of once you have the asset, how do you actually make it work in the game, especially with the Bannerfall plugin. So without further ado, let's go. To start off with, if we go into our options and resource packs, you'll note that I have a BF public release here, which is available on the Modrinth pack that comes with the Patreon download, as well as a splash text folder. Neither of these are going to have anything to do with what we're doing today. We're going to be focusing on the BF tutorial pack that we have over here. This will be available in its finished state over on Patreon in case you want to reverse engineer anything that I have made. In the meantime, let's go ahead and enable this and we'll go over to our open pack folder. Inside of this is basically just a pack.mc meta file and a pack.png file. That's just to tell Minecraft that this is in fact a texture pack. If we go into asset and breakfast, if you're wondering why it's called breakfast, by the way, the abbreviation for Bannerfall is BF Bannerfall. And in order to kind of talk about the SMP while it was in its development stage without accidentally leaking what it was about, we codenamed it Breakfast SMP. Apple called it Boyfriend SMP. I called it Breakfast SMP. But because I was doing all the dev stuff in the back end, that's what ended up it being in all of the code. If you go inside here, you have items, models, and textures, and we're going to be populating these three folders with different things in order for you to have your custom texture pack in the game. Let's head over to Blockbench real quick, and we'll get started. As you can see, we have a Zweihander already made for us by the lovely Lemontine. We have a texture file over here, which is just off screen, and then the actual arranged Blockbench model over here. If we go over to File and Export, and then export block item model, it'll open up a folder that we can go ahead and export into. Right now, we just need to call this greatsword.json. Whatever you name it will be the name that you end up using in the actual game, so make sure it's actually something that you want it to be called in the game. Next, we'll save our greatsword texture by going into greatsword.png save as, and then greatsword.png again into the same folder. By the way, now's a good time to double check before you actually rendered everything. Over here, you'll note a display window. If you click on that, you can see how the item looks, whether it's on the ground or whether or not it's in your third person or even on top of your head. Oh, dear Lord. Or if it's in the GUI, etc, etc. Yes, I call it GUI. Don't judge me. So once we have those two files created, let's go ahead and move them over to our resource pack. Greatsword.png is going to go into textures in case you couldn't guess, but also you'll note that in the download that I give you over on Patreon, there's also an item folder inside of the textures folder, and that's going to be important. You're going to want to drag the greatsword into there. So now we have our greatsword.png inside of breakfast textures item. Let's go back up to breakfast, and then we'll move our greatsword into models, and then from models inside of there into item. Now is a good time to open up this file that was rendered by Blockbench. I use Visual Studio Code in order to edit a lot of these JSON files. That's just what I find easiest, but you can use whatever text editor you want. Now, there is actually an error in this. All of this here, all of the different elements like the blade or the little tassels that exist at the bottom over here, all of these different things that you can see as I'm highlighting are all of the different elements here. And they need to point to a texture, and they point to that texture by using this little identifier here, which mirrors this up here, which shows this here. This is the path in order for Minecraft to be able to find the texture. But you'll note that this is wrong. It exists inside of breakfast, but then it also exists inside of item. If we go back to our folder structure here, breakfast, textures, and then item. Same for breakfast, models, item. So we're going to want to make sure that it does breakfast, item / greatsword. Now, if we got rid of this item folder and we just moved this greatsword and this textures file from these item things up into here, then you wouldn't need this and this would be correct. But because of the formatting that Bannerfall uses, that's what I've used, and I would recommend you do the same just so it's the same as this tutorial. Go ahead and save that and we'll go back into our folder here. That would be everything you need to do if we were doing an older version of Minecraft. However, because this is 1.21.11 and forwards, Minecraft uses item definitions. Now, item definitions are actually very helpful for resource pack makers, but it does require an extra step while you're doing things. and those item definitions live inside of a folder called items. Note that there isn't a subfolder here called item. Where we are placing our files is just going to be immediately in items. And you'll notice there's something here for me already, and this will be available in the download as well. This is an item definition file. I'm also going to leave the contents of this file in the YouTube description of this video. But let's open it up and have a little look what it looks like. As you can see, very simple. Model, type, model, and then the model file goes breakfast item greatsword. Remember, item is important. That shows and points towards models, and then item here, and then this file that we made and generated from Blockbench earlier. Now that's it. If we enable this over on our client, I'm going to go ahead and give myself a stick. I'm going to give it a custom data here for item model. We're going to do breakfast greatsword, and then we're going to click enter, and there we go. There it is. This is the greatsword, the Zweihander, but it's actually a stick. And why item definitions are so cool is because in the past, you would have had to tie this model to a specific item, like a stone sword or an iron sword or a diamond sword. And you have to do that for every single item that you'd want to appear it. But because now we have item definitions, you can just clarify the item model and you can apply it to anything. For example, an ender pearl, if you really, really wanted to. Now I have an ender pearl that looks like a Zweihander. Does this work? Yeah, so you can really attach this model to anything you like. And if you were one of the people who watched my series over on Bannerfall, which by the way, thank you very much if you were, you may have noticed that I actually attached this item definition to an iron sword as well as an iron spear. And what that allowed me to do is lower the sword and point it forwards like this, which is really cool. So this is what it looked like when it was a sword normally, but when I wanted to use lunge or like knight somebody, I would do this. And it was cool. It's a great item definitions are awesome. Now, before we continue on how somebody who isn't an admin will be able to get hold of something like this, because obviously you can't make everybody an admin and then they go ahead and put item model in whenever they're giving themselves an item or something. You may have noticed that in the inventory, there's a kind of not very nice looking item model here. Because in vanilla Minecraft, they don't have the actual like model. They have a icon, like a textured icon, a 64 by 64 file that if it is inside of the inventory or if you throw it on the ground, it uses that icon. I'm going to show you how to set that up with what we've done already. It isn't mandatory, which is why I've left it until now, but it is quite cool and helpful. So inside of this file, you're going to want to paste a 16 by 16. I misspoke earlier. I didn't mean 64 by 64. A 16 by 16 pixel icon, which will act as the icon in game. The round was kind enough to make this one for me. You're going to want to call it whatever the name of this thing is, _icon. So if we open it up here, you can see it's going to be a little bit blurry because we're zooming in, but that is a 16 by 16 pixel of the Zweihander. Let's back up and go into models, item, and we're going to want to create a new file here called greatsword _icon, and then we're going to want to change it from a TXT into a JSON. If you go into the description of this YouTube video, you'll find some text that I have got for greatsword icon model file. And if we open this up, you'll see that it is empty. But if we paste what was in the description into here, which is parent item generated, textures, Minecraft item, greatsword icon. Obviously, this wouldn't be greatsword icon. This would be whatever your name is, followed by _icon. That is just our model file. It's a lot simpler than the model file for the actual like greatsword itself, because it doesn't have to render all of this different like Blockbench stuff. It just says, hey, this is like a normal item that you would expect to find in Minecraft, and you can find it here at this path. Those are the two files that you need to paste in. So one is going to go in models item, and it's going to be greatsword icon. The other one's going to go into textures item, and it's going to be called greatsword icon. The final thing we need to do is go into items and open up our item definition. Now, earlier, it was this very simple thing here. However, in, again, the YouTube description, there is going to be a more complicated one for if you want to have an icon show, like a pixel icon, rather than the actual model. The updated one looks like this. As you can see, it's a little bit more complicated than the other item definition we have, but it's actually quite simple. Basically, it just says we're going to have a property here for display context. Display context is different ways that you might see this item in the world. For example, inside of the inventory, if it's on the ground, if it's inside an item display. And rather than use the greatsword model that we were pointing to earlier, we're now going to use the greatsword icon model, which we just created. If the item that you're looking at is in a GUI, on the ground, or is in a fixed position, use the icon. Otherwise, fallback here, basically saying catch everything else, use the ordinary greatsword model of the actual like one that we rendered from Blockbench. We'll go ahead and save this. We'll go ahead and press F3T on our client in order to refresh our resource pack. And there it is. As you can see, all of them look exactly the same, except for when they are in my inventory or if they are on the ground, much like a normal Minecraft sword. You might be wondering, how do I actually make it so that everybody sees this? Because you have it on your client, but they don't have it on theirs. And you have two options here. The quote-unquote simpler one, although it's a little bit more laborious, is that you would zip this pack up and you would send it to everybody on your server. And you say, hey, this is my like greatsword texture pack. Please enable this so that I don't look like I'm walking around just holding a big like black and purple box. Obviously, if a bunch of people are putting in different models every single week, that's going to get quite tedious quite fast. So instead, what you can do is, instead of adding all of these things that you added into a different pack here, you can add it to the public release folder. There's a lot of textures that exist in that folder. For example, all of the different like potion effects that tell you what thing you're on, as well as if I go ahead and do bf admin create orb, this will look really weird if you don't have this enabled. In fact, I can show you. Yep, looks really weird. Rather than have this enabled locally on your client, you could have it instead uploaded onto the server and then it auto downloads for everybody. To do that, you would go into what you were going to be uploading. Go ahead and select this and we're going to zip all of this into a file. We then can go to MC packs, that's what we use, and you can drag this into here. Once you click upload, it'll then create a download URL and a hash, but all you're interested in over here is the edit your server properties file. You can go ahead and copy this. You would then go to your server.properties file. You would find where it has resource related things. You would select all of these and you would paste in the values that you just got from uploading the MC pack. You can then save, refresh, and then when people come and join, they will automatically have that applied to them saying, hey, we use a custom server pack, please accept this. That means if anybody after you've done this creates another custom model and they want everybody else to have it, rather than having to send out another resource pack, you can just go ahead and edit the one that you have on your machine, re-upload it to MC packs and swap out that over on server.properties. Okay, now that actually is all of the technical stuff done, let's go through talking about how we can make it so that people who aren't admins can gain access to these items. It's very, very simple. You're going to need a knight's help because only knights can access anvils. Let's go ahead and give ourselves a copper sword. All you have to do is go into an anvil and then name it what you named the item model. For example, in our case, it's breakfast greatsword. And you can see as we're typing, it's trying to apply a different model, such as that. And so you'll know whether or not that's correct based off of when you are finished typing. It'll show the actual like item that it will become. You can then take that, and then if you want it to be not named that, you could call it whatever you want, for example, Zweihander. And that does not require admin privileges. Anybody can do that if they are a knight. Some people have also wanted information regarding how they can get hands on the blue and red kingdom shields. This is the same as that. I can drop this into here, do breakfast blue _ shield, and there you go. This is the same for if I do red shield. Obviously, I would only really recommend doing it with actual shields, but hey, you know, whatever you want to do, really. That's how people can get different items into the game. However, if you are a mage and you're wanting your mage spellbook to be something specific, you're going to have an admin's help. Thankfully, it's very easy. All they have to do is do tag your name, add custom model tag _ and then what follows from here is the name that you called your Blockbench file or model. So for us, it would be greatsword. Note that isn't breakfast :greatsword because that's not allowed. It is also not breakfast _ greatsword. It's just greatsword. So about the breakfast. When they add that tag to you, anytime you get a spellbook given to you, it will give you it as the model of whatever you gave there. So, as an example, if I did bf admin set class, I'll make myself into a mage, and then we will come over here, and I'll go ahead and get my spellbook by just selecting some spells. As you can see, now my quote-unquote spellbook or staff is the Zweihander, or the greatsword. Even if you were then to lose that item and you recalled it, it would then once again give you this. This didn't exist in the actual SMP, but I wish it had. I created it specifically because I wanted to make it as simple for you guys to be able to do for your servers. But on the SMP, we were constantly having to give like Scott and Cam and that lot and Mythical Sausage their correct like spell books with the correct custom model tags and everything again and again. For you guys, it just happens automatically. And that is it. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, you can go over to our community Discord and you can open up a ticket and I will be there to help you out. Unless this is like 20 years in the future, in which case I've probably retired and I'm doing something different with my life. You can still open a ticket, but I don't know if I'll respond. Thank you very much and go Blue Kingdom.